Hey, this is GhostDad for ProAudioStar, and I'm here at the cutting room in New York City to take a look at the new Moog Minitaur analog bass synthesizer. It's a brand new synth from Moog. It's based on the Moog Taurus, which is a classic bass synthesizer from the 70s. It had bass pedals. You don't see any pedals or keys here, but it does have MIDI input as well as USB MIDI capability, so you can control it that way. But it is a fully analog synthesizer, so you're getting that Moog analog sound. Why don't we take a look at some of the features and see what it's capable of? So one of the things that excited me a lot about the Minitaur and might interest you is that USB MIDI capability makes it really easy to integrate the Minitaur with Ableton or Logic or Pro Tools if that's what you're using at home. I've got my Logic session open right here. Literally, I was able to pull it out of the box, plug in the USB, and get it talking to my Logic session really quickly. What you're hearing right now is sort of just one of the oscillators turned all the way up. That's really your bread and butter of your bass sound here with the Minitaur. There are two oscillators available. We're only hearing one right now, and you have a choice between sawtooth and square. You can kind of hear the difference between those two. And if you were thinking that that's sort of a cool bass sound to begin with, just wait until you add the second oscillator in. Tune it a full octave above or below the first synthesizer. But maybe you want to tune it to an interval. A fifth is always good. I can set that second oscillator also to either square or sawtooth wave. Which will make some difference in how they kind of fit together and the overtones and the sounds you're going to hear of them together. And since it is a Moog, it has that classic Moog filter on it. So if you apply the filter to it, that's where you can really start to shape your sound. And a resonance knob as well, so you can set some resonance to that filter. It does have an amplitude filter like you'd expect on any good synthesizer, so I can set my attack time a little differently. I can have that sound swell in. And with the release turned on, I can actually have it swell back out again too. And sustain and decay for as long as I like. If I'm holding the key or if I'm not holding the key. You also have an envelope for that filter, which is pretty cool, so you can have the filter swell on and off. So you can get those really cool building, swelling bass sounds. And if that wasn't enough and you don't have enough hands, you actually have an LFO available, a low frequency oscillator that'll modulate either one of those envelopes for you. To explain that a little better, if you had the modulation being applied to the amplitude, you would actually hear the pitch kind of fluctuate based on the rate of that low frequency oscillator. So you can get some cool effects out of it that way. But the nice thing about this LFO is that it gets really fast. It actually goes into the audible range. So once you make it really fast, you start to get some interesting artifacting and some cool sounds that way too. I can also do that same LFO to my frequency if I'd like. So it's a good way to get some really warbly sounds. Another thing on here is portamento, which is really nice to have. It's really cool to have a bass line that can kind of sweep one note to the next. Just to show you that really quick. And you can change the rate of that glide as well with the glide rate knob. right here and turn it on and off. We'll take a quick look at the back of the Minitaur. We've got our main out. That's what you're hearing your audio through, is this 1/4 inch here. We also have a 1/4 inch input. This is so you can actually send a line through the Minitaur, through that filter. Maybe you have a guitar or bass, so you can run a vocal through it, whatever you want, pass it right through that filter and apply those envelopes to it in the same way. We have CV inputs that control our pitch, filter, volume, and gate. This is for control voltage. Maybe you have other synths, or maybe some Moog or Fruger pedals, or the MP pedal that sends CV, or maybe you have like a MIDI to CV converter somewhere in your studio. You can send actual CV right to this unit and control it that way. We also have a MIDI input and our USB MIDI I/O, and that's obviously how you were hearing the notes and the pitches and the gates that you were hearing the Minitaur make. But at the same time, you're able to control those parameters via your MIDI keyboard or your actual computer session from Ableton, Logic, Pro Tools, whatever you're using. You can automate and send through that USB connection as well. So the USB port on the back of the Minitaur serves a couple of different purposes. Obviously, that's what you're going to want to use to get note information to the Minitaur from your DAW session, or maybe from your MIDI controller running through your DAW. But you can actually set up notes. I've set up a little sequence, and that's sending to the Minitaur. It's kind of like a little syncopated, housey bass line sounding thing, which is cool. I might add some, turn on the release so I can kind of have some sustain to those notes. Leave the attack down. I've got some funky notes in there that sound a little weird, but I'm gonna leave those in there and turn on the glide and see if that makes a cool sound. That's pretty cool. Now, one of the other awesome things about that USB port on the back is that it'll actually send MIDI data back to your session. All of these knobs here, every one of them with the exception of the volume, in fact, sends MIDI back into your DAW, and you can record that to an automation track. So say you want to do something drastic like control this filter here, maybe swell in your bass line. You can actually record that into the session the same way you did the MIDI data. And then that'll actually play back now that it's been recorded onto an automation channel here. Which is cool. You can go in and edit that. You can change the automation. You can kind of play around with a couple different things at a time, set up a few different tracks maybe before you go ahead and track that into your session. It's just another cool way to control the synth and kind of a nice feature. I should also mention then that USB port actually comes in real handy for Moog's Minitaur editor software. It's software that Moog offers for download when you register your Minitaur. It lets you save presets to your computer and also dial them back in. So it really is almost like having this soft synth control over a hardware synthesizer that sits right here on your desktop, which is pretty cool. As you can see, the Minitaur is really capable of a whole bunch of different sounds, heavy bass notes, even some higher notes, just with those two oscillators, the filter, the LFO, envelopes, and maybe you want to automate those from your MIDI controller or from your Logic session or your Ableton session, whatever you're using. There's also the Minitaur editor program Moog has, so you can actually load up presets and save your own presets to the computer via that USB connection. For me, it's sort of the best of both worlds. You can kind of treat this synth like a soft synth. You could treat it like something you would call up and be able to control inside of your session, inside the box. But at the same time, all those sounds are coming from analog electronics made by Moog. For the best prices on the Minitaur and all Moog products, be sure to call, chat, email us, ProAudioStar.com. Thanks.